What is up, boys and girls? It's your pal right here, the one and only Black Avenger, aka the Black Azrael Lee Sanders, coming at you with a late night review as I just got done literally watching the Steve Austin podcast interview with Vince McMahon live only on the WWE network. I'm sure without a shadow of doubt Steve Austin is going to have the audio version of it be available hopefully later tonight or maybe sometime before the week is out. I did try to record the audio for you all. I actually have it cleaning up as I'm speaking right now, so hopefully I will have it be remixed, audio enhanced, and all that for you all's enjoyment to check out. So make sure you constantly check up on the episode description for the link for those of you that don't have the WWE network, as we will have that link be available for you all to check out the interview in its entirety. You can also follow up with us on Twitter at the RCWR show and Facebook at Infinity One Productions. That's Infinity with an E. Put in the actual number 1, Infinity One Productions, as we'll make the downloadable links be available. Promise you guys we won't give you a download link that's going to give you Trojans, weird spyware and all that. It's a safe link that we use here for our shows when we're uploading MP3s and all that. All right. Make sure you give this piece a thumbs up. Share it a number of ways by Facebooking, Google Plusing, retweeting. One of the many ways you can spread a good word about our content. Now, for those of you that had saw the Steve Austin Vince McMahon interview, more than welcome to post your comments below. Hit us up on social media. Let us know what you had thought about it, as we're going to include you all's reactions and feedback on a new radio edition of the RCWR show, which you can catch at a special start time of 9 p.m. Eastern over on our old platform at blogtalkradio.com. It's going to be for just 1 week only. A lot of stuff that we have to talk about on that show, so make sure you join us for that. Off the break, as far as the Steve Austin Vince McMahon interview goes, something that Steve Austin had addressed from the get-go was what's going on with the WWE network for the fans in the UK, as he told Vince McMahon how he's constantly been getting emails about the WWE network in the UK. What's going on? It's gotten these false starts. What's the deal? Vince McMahon wouldn't go into that much detail. He said, in fact, there were a number of false starts, but that he hopes to have it be resolved early next year. Sounds to me like the goal is going to be within the first quarter. Now, Vince McMahon did not say that, but he said that he hoped to have the WWE in the UK launched, the WWE network launched in the UK early next year. I'm thinking first quarter. Also, Steve Austin had talked about what came about from tonight's WWE Raw. You know, he sounded like he really wanted to jump out there and say that the Raw that he watched tonight was brutal. I am definitely aware of the little bit of feedback from you all as I was looking at some of the tweets from you all, just trying to see how you all had enjoyed Raw tonight, as I actually didn't even watch it. I was busy doing some other stuff, but I do have it on the DVR. I will be watching later on, but a lot of you all really felt that Raw was very weak earlier tonight. Steve Austin kind of shared those same sentiments and basically said, hey, you know, as far as Raw being 3 hours, Steve Austin basically tried to jump out there and say, you know, is it really worth it? Is it 3 hours really worth it? And Vince McMahon said basically that not every single week is going to be a home run. There's going to be those nights where it seems a little bit off, but then there could be those nights where the show is on point. It's just not registering well with people. They just maybe don't get it. There was also talk about what's going on with the locker room, as Steve Austin told Vince McMahon how he's talked to a few guys, and there's many of them backstage that kind of come off as if they're walking on eggshells, that they have serious trepidations, that it's really sinking in their heads that other than the WWE, that's pretty much it as far as the big dance goes. Pretty much, if they don't make things work in the WWE, they're going to have to go on the independent circuit and all that. Basically, it's all about reaching for that brass ring. And Steve Austin questions Vince McMahon, what's going on with the locker room? Why does he think they have the trepidations? And Vince McMahon felt that, on the contrary, there's a lot of people that are reaching for that brass ring. He noted that Bray Wyatt is one of those guys, Roman Reigns is one of those guys, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins. Hopefully, I didn't mention the same name twice. It's late at night, but I'm just going to recap those names one more time for you all. He mentioned Bray Wyatt. He mentioned Seth Rollins. He mentioned Dean Ambrose. He mentioned Roman Reigns. Those were the ones that he pointed out as far as who's reaching for the brass ring, which would then bring up Steve Austin to another point, which is, and I was very shocked that they went in depth on this, but Antonio Cesaro, as far as what's going on with him, Steve Austin did a good job giving him a lot of praise. And if you follow Steve Austin on social media, you know from time to time he's been very passionate, he's been very vocal about Cesaro, being a great fan of his in-ring work and everything. And he told Vince, he said, look, what's going on with Cesaro? What is it that he's lacking? Because he has the great in-ring ability. You all at one point paired him up with Paul Heyman for a mouthpiece, and then you pulled Heyman away from him, and it just kind of seems like this man has just been kind of floating around on the roster. What is it that he's not lacking? And from Vince McMahon's own mouth, he said that he is a man that definitely is very gifted in the ring, but charisma is definitely a problem. His promo work is a problem. He's not sure if that is maybe because Cesaro is European to a certain extent, but he really feels in his heart of hearts that once Cesaro does put it all together, he will definitely be a breakout star. And he admits that there's only but so much that they, being WWE, creative and all that, there's only but so much they can do to try to help elevate that star. Next subject that was brought up was what's going on with the WWE writing, as from what Steve Austin could remember when he was in the WWE, there used to be a time where it was just Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson. They were practically writing all the shows. Now you have multiple writers that have gotten involved. It's basically not the same product that it used to be, as years and years ago Vince McMahon basically had like two, maybe three writers, five or whatever, that were up under him, and he would actually oversee everything that they were doing. And Vince McMahon said, unfortunately, he's only one man. He can only do but so much. He also had said that there's been times where, on top of working with Pat Patterson, he's also worked with Dusty Rhodes. It all had led into a nice little funny story about a swimming pool that was at Vince McMahon's house that everybody would use. I think it was kind of like R&R, as they were trying to come up with storylines, angles, things of that nature they could do for that week's of WWE programming. But it was a great little interesting story right there. Vince McMahon just basically said, the times have changed. They are now a publicly traded company and all that. They have a lot of responsibilities to, shareholders and all that. And that basically it's good to be able to reach out to outside entertainment fields, bring in writers, things of that nature. I was a little bit surprised that Steve Austin didn't continue to stay on Vince McMahon and really home in on the fact that nowadays we have people that have written soaps, or they've written a kids cartoon show or whatever. That they're bringing in certain writers that don't have the wrestling knowledge, never watched wrestling before a day in their lives, so they really can't connect with the characters, the wrestlers that is, to a certain extent. I was really surprised that Steve Austin really didn't home in on that. I kind of wish that he would have. Shane McMahon's exit was brought up as far as what led to the exit. Why hasn't he come back? What's going on? And Vince McMahon said, hey, Shane McMahon and he, they just had a conversation, and mutually they pretty much came to the same conclusion that it was kind of best if Shane had left. And he gave Shane a lot of credit, saying how, he's gone on to bigger and better things. You all know that have been following the career of Shane McMahon, what all he's been up to in Japan and all that. And he said, as far as his kids being pushed into the business, is something that he did not try to force upon them. They willingly wanted to help out. They wanted to get involved with it and everything. It led to him telling a really cool story back when he was still a student of the game, if you will, under his dad, Vince McMahon senior, and they had told a really cool story about how there was an announcer named Ray. I didn't catch the last name, unfortunately, so forgive me, you longtime wrestling veterans, but basically, Ray was at this WWE event, so was Vince's dad, and Ray had demanded a raise, and he basically had told Vince Sr., look, I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to do my commentating, my announcing, unless you give me my raise. And Vince Sr., he thought about it, stood his ground, and said, I'm not going to give you a raise. And Ray had walked out right there on the spot. Talk about unprofessional, but give props to Vince Sr. for standing his ground. And Vince Jr. just talked about how he admired his dad so much from seeing that. And he asked his dad, what's going to happen now? What are you going to do? And Vince Sr. said to him, well, you're going to be my new ring announcer. You're going to be my commentator, and you're going to be very good at it. And, of course, early on, one of the first few people that got teamed up with Vince McMahon was, you guessed it, Pat Patterson. And look at that. Those guys have had such a very good, long, friendly, professional relationship with one another. What you all had probably been waiting for, definitely what a lot of us were thinking. As I was paying attention to some of you all's tweets, private messages, I did agree with you all. CM Punk, he dropped one hell of a pipe bomb on Colt Cabana's podcast show. And I like how there was some tweets that came out from you guys that were like, the Vince McMahon Steve Austin interview doesn't mean anything if Vince McMahon doesn't address CM Punk. First of all, before the CM Punk thing even dropped, there were so many of you all that were out there that said, wow, Vince McMahon, Stone Cold Steve Austin, this is going to kick ass, this is going to be badass. Not sure what's going to be covered, but the fact that they're saying that there's not going to be any bullshit questions that's going to be asked, that is pretty much going to be anything can happen, anything goes, anything can be addressed, okay, it's going to be good. A lot of you all were very pumped up and ecstatic for that. To basically say that the interview was going to be crappy if the CM Punk situation was not addressed. Come on now. You guys are the same ones that were looking forward to it. Don't jump out there like that. However, CM Punk was addressed. And Steve Austin, he gave it to him nice, short, and sweet. He said, yes or no question. Do you want to talk about CM Punk? You want to talk about some of the things that he said on his podcast? Vince McMahon, he really didn't want to go into too much detail, but this is the little bit that he said according to the notes that I took for you guys here. As far as the termination papers that CM Punk received on his wedding day, Vince McMahon said he had no idea. He had no clue that the papers were sent to him, that he received the papers on his wedding day, and for that he did apologize to CM Punk. He said that there are definitely some things that he regrets and that he hopes that he and CM Punk can work together one day. And he noted that, hey, he and Steve Austin, they had their differences over the years, but they were able to work things out. The immortal Hulk Hogan, Hell Ultimate Warrior. For Vince McMahon, it's all about putting the ego to the side, as he admits that he does have a very massive ego, and that when it's all said and done, it's all about doing what's best for the fans, the WWE Universe. And Steve Austin had asked him if he listened to CM Punk's appearance on the podcast. He put it over, said it was really good, and Vince had said no. On the contrary, he didn't. He just heard a lot of explicit language. I'm under the impression that Vince McMahon probably had got a hold of maybe like a couple of transcript highlights from some of the things that CM Punk had said. But hopefully Vince McMahon will do the right thing at his own leisure, and maybe he'll listen to it. Maybe he already has. He just doesn't want to give too much more praise to it. I don't know. But Vince did say that there are two sides to every story, and that what ended up happening between he and CM Punk is really the case of bad communication, and that CM Punk has always been a loner. He's always rubbed people off the wrong way. And Steve Austin said, well, for the most part during my career, I was a loner too. And Vince McMahon kind of played off of that. And he acknowledged the fact that, well, Steve, a lot of people, they really had liked you. They loved working with you. While not officially putting down CM Punk, it kind of falls back to what CM Punk had said on that Colt Cabana podcast, which was him admitting that he wasn't the best of people to work with, that he was telling a lot of people to fuck off, things of that nature. All right. Next up was who can bridge the gap between Vince McMahon and CM Punk as a result of those communication problems. And as far as Vince McMahon was concerned, unfortunately, once attorneys get involved, it's pretty much it. It's pretty much an ugly situation from that point on until things get really cooled off. And from there, Stone Cold Steve Austin had told a really cool story that he never told before about when he did come back to the WWE after he walked out, how Vince McMahon said to him, look, I got to hit you with a fine. I got to send a message that what you did, it won't be tolerated. And Steve was like, well, damn, Vince, no problem. Whatever you want. How much are you thinking? And Vince had said, okay, well, I'm thinking 650 grand. And Steve Austin said, hell, man, that's a hell of a sting. Can we go a little bit lower? And basically, Steve Austin has said, well, why not 250 grand? And Vince said, okay, fine, we'll do that. But it was all about setting the tone, setting the right message to the boys in the back. Otherwise, anybody will think they can do that, and eventually they'll get what they want. Brock Lesnar ending Undertaker's streak was brought up. Vince McMahon did a hell of a job in putting over The Undertaker. Mark Calloway saying that he always does what's best for business. One of the nicest, sweetest people that you'll ever come across. Vince manned up and said that that was his decision to end the streak, and that it's something that he doesn't regret, given how things were aligning themselves at the time leading up to the WrestleMania season. He felt that Brock Lesnar was the right man for the job. He felt that Brock Lesnar was the right person to be the one to end the streak. And from there, this would lead to Steve Austin being brutally honest with Vince McMahon and asking the question, what's going on with Brock Lesnar? He's rarely being used on WWE programming. What gives? Nice comparison that Vince McMahon had made to Jake Roberts, basically saying, you remember how when seeing Jake Roberts, he would come out with the snake, Damien, and you thought that was just badass, and you're like, wow, this is really cool. It was like a special attraction. But then when you see it week after week after week after week, it loses that special attraction to it. It loses that special aura behind it, because now it's just a common thing. And as far as Brock Lesnar goes, Brock Lesnar, the way that they want him to be set up right now is a special attraction, and they feel that the way they've been utilizing him has been just right. And Vince McMahon did admit that per Brock Lesnar's contract, the way that it was set up, he's scheduled for X amount of dates, and that at the end of the day, it's not about the title, it's more so about the people and the storylines involved leading up to making you want to see that match that's going to happen on that next episode of Raw, SmackDown, Main Event, NXT, Superstars, or at that month's respected pay-per-view. And that's what he had to say with regards to the Brock Lesnar situation. Not to also mention, in defending Brock Lesnar, he said, it's better to have Brock Lesnar be in one-off special type of matches rather than to see him weekly and monthly, because then you risk having him go through the entire roster, and then it's kind of like, what's next? Basically, it's all about continuing to have that mystique be built around him and everything. Speaking of mystique and all that, Sting was brought up, and as far as Vince McMahon is concerned, we won't be seeing a lot of Sting. Vince McMahon is looking to have Sting be utilized somewhat in similar fashion to Brock Lesnar, and noted that 9 times out of 10 we will be seeing Sting again at WrestleMania. So a huge bombshell that Vince McMahon had dropped right there. Very confident right there. I should note that this live web show interview, it ran 15 minutes in the OT, and it was badass. As Steve Austin had said at one point to Vince McMahon, we have to wrap this up because it was approaching the hour mark. And Steve Austin was like, I really would like to have more time with you, but I'm being told we have a minute left on the WWE network. And Vince McMahon said, well, since I own the network, we can go an extra 15 minutes or whatever, so let's do it. So that was really badass right there. So you guys that haven't seen it yet, you basically got an hour, 15 minutes of Steve Austin talking to Vince McMahon. Great stuff right there. Macho Man, is he going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? Vince McMahon said yes, it will happen. Steve Austin is like, when will it happen? Vince is saying it will happen soon, at which point Steve Austin said, what, like in the next 10 years? Vince did not go into any more details, but he did say it's not going to even take that long. He definitely will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The Monday Night Wars were brought up, and the question was asked if it was WWE's philosophy to take out WCW, because now you have a situation where there's no competition, at which Vince McMahon wanted more clarification as far as no competition from what standpoint, because there's competition from live events, whether it's Disney or whatever, concerts, there's always competition. Stone Cold broke it down as far as the sports entertainment aspect. And Vince McMahon really did not answer the question, but he did say with regards to the Monday Night War that basically it was all about who was going to burn out the quickest, and WCW burned out first because they ran out of dedication or being dedicated, especially when it came to guys that were in booking power that decided, well, hell, I got this big fat contract, I'm not going to go work the tapings this week. No, forget that. It's not happening. People that basically lost that fighting spirit and all that, while WWE, they always had something in their back pocket. From there, the topic of buying out the other promotions came out. Vince McMahon said he didn't look at it like that. What he looked at originally, and at the time he was broke, he didn't have buku's money, as he was approaching different owners of different territories. He basically had pitched them the idea of, hey, let me buy out your promotion. And his whole thing was he saw a bigger picture, because he wanted for wrestling to be like on a big global aspect. And some people, they laughed in his face. Some people didn't believe in his vision and all that. Some people, they basically did not want to get in on what it was that he was selling. And his whole thing was, when you don't take the money that you're making from your product and you try to put back into it, you make an investment into it, and you bring in outside forces to help make that product bigger and stronger, then ultimately you're going to meet your demise. And his whole thing is that's what ended up happening to a lot of the promoters that he went to try to see if they would be willing to sell their promotions to him. Jim Ross was brought up as far as why he's no longer still in the WWE. Vince McMahon had brought up the SummerSlam incident, and he also had mentioned the fact that at one point Jim Ross had kind of said to Vince McMahon, hey, look, I'm getting a little bit burned out. I just want to go home to Oklahoma. I'd like to, maybe do it, help out in the WWE and all that on a limited run. And Vince McMahon's whole deal is, when you're with the WWE and you're in a certain type of positions that he's in, or what JR and everybody else that had came before him is in, that job is 24/7. And he gave Jim Ross a lot of props, said he's a good man, great mind for the business and all that. Steve Austin has said to Vince that he is aware of a different story, but that he would talk to Jim Ross about it, as the two of them, they talk every single week. And that was pretty much it. I mean, there was a really interesting story about Vince McMahon's humbled beginnings, how he grew up in a trailer park, in a trailer park, and talking about how he feels the WWE product has to apply and attract all different types of people, different ages, different work industries, and all that. One main thing that Steve Austin kept trying to drive home was where could fans air their grievances about the WWE product, like ideas, changes they would like to see happen with the product. How is WWE really listening to the fans and all that? And again, Vince McMahon kind of danced around that a little bit as it was kind of forced upon Vince McMahon, courtesy of Stone Cold. Okay, so people can like what send stuff on WWE on social media, or hey, can they maybe hit you up on Twitter? Yeah, Vince McMahon on Twitter. There wasn't officially a seal of approval from Vince McMahon saying yes, if you send it here, I'll read it, or our blah 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 people will read it. Even though we know that they have some people that are paying attention to social media, but I mean, look, if you go to WWE's website, I can't remember what section it's in, but there's even a little section that says, don't use this to send us ideas for storylines, things of that nature. I'll see if I can find it for you guys, and we'll talk about it on our next show. But I would have to say that this Steve Austin and Vince McMahon podcast interview was very insightful. I really enjoyed it. I was definitely taken back by the talk of CM Punk, but I was even more so happy that it was brought up. A lot of bases were covered. I thought Steve Austin did a very good job in the hour, 15 minutes that he had Vince McMahon on the show for. And I'm hoping that this definitely is the start of a very good, beautiful relationship between Steve Austin and the WWE, because I would love to see something like this happen again. And I'm quite sure that once this thing becomes available on demand, it's probably going to be like one of the top 3 things that a lot of folks are going to be checking out on the network for, like, if not that whole week, at least for a couple of weeks, that it's going to prompt WWE to jump out there and do something again very, very soon. And honestly, I think it would be mega badass. Who would you all like to see Steve Austin interview next on the WWE Network exclusively? Post your comments down below. And once again, those of you that had saw the interview with Vince McMahon tonight, post your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about it. We got a lot that we're going to be talking about on our radio edition of the RCWR show, which you can catch at a special time, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be coming on, I believe, Blog Talk Radio. I'm not sure if I'm going to have my broadcast partner, Titus Machiavelli, with me. If not, then we're going to be on Spreaker. So make sure you're following us on Twitter and on Facebook, as we'll officially, like maybe 3 hours before it's showtime, we'll definitely give you guys the official link where you can call into the show and all that, check it out live. A lot that we're going to be talking about, though. We'll cover the very latest in wrestling headlines, entertainment headlines. We'll also dissect the CM Punk Colt Cabana podcast interview. As man, it's just been a busy week. In the meantime, if it's your first time checking us out, love to have you subscribe to us so you never miss out on all the great content we do for you here on a weekly basis. We got a little bit of something for everybody, so do hit that subscribe button. And one more time, those of you that's going to be looking for the download audio link for the Steve Austin Vince McMahon podcast, I'm cleaning it up as we speak. Hopefully by the time you're checking this out, I'm actually done. Read the episode description for the link. It'll be a Sin Space link. No Trojans and all that. You got nothing to worry about, all right? So until next go round, I'm wishing all y'all to be safe, and most importantly, do be kind to one another. See you next go round, everybody. Take care.